Hello and welcome to my presentation. If you don't already know who I am, I'm Ethan, otherwise known as X1N. I'm a free agent Valorant coach, and I've been in Valorant since the very start. I've coached, I'm coaching, I've casted, I've IGL'd, and all throughout my time, I've had a pretty big pet peeve, and that is the current leadership structure within Valorant. So what are we currently seeing? Well, we're seeing organizations prioritize tactical expertise over true leaders. And I think it's reflected in the inconsistent performances, but also the poor roster construction and the frequent roster changes we see across every split in almost every single region. Why is this? Well, I think that a lot of these coaches and potentially organizations are prioritizing short term results and success over actual longevity and sustainability, which isn't the right or best structure in any industry. This took me about 5-10 minutes, okay? And these are just some of the small roster changes we've seen in Split 1 and Split 2 of this year. And I'm not here to poke fun at the roster changes or the organizations that have made them, but I think it reflects the issue that I am personally seeing. And that's the lack of leadership in coaches, the lack of vision within coaches, the lack of understanding in psychological factors within esports and this high performance environment. And this isn't sustainable. This isn't just only costing organizations a lot of extra money to pick up and drop players, but it just makes the game a little bit more sour because some of the performances we're seeing on the international stages aren't good enough. We're seeing incredibly micro and macro fundamental teams come to the international stage and start to crumble. And it's a constant discussion of why does this team suck? And that's not fair. I don't believe that all of a sudden a team's micro and macro has fallen off of the cliff of a planet. I think that this is a deeper issue of lack of leadership, a lack of understanding from head coaches and personnel within organizations of how intense esports is as a performance, but also how to challenge and fix these issues within some of their players and teams. I'm not here to say that we need to get rid of the Valo plants and get rid of our retake protocols and all those kind of things. I just think that we need to readdress our focus onto more individual and team-based psychology rather than the Valo plants and the strategy. Because right now, this visual aid, for example, I've not done any data collection, so don't come at me for that. But this to me should be the perfect pie chart of where organizations and coaches are directing their energy, time, and attention. Strategy, team, individual. It's all balanced. I like to live my life through a balanced perspective. And it's kind of reflected here with the Rocks. Because esports is more than just strategy. It's more than just retakes, executes, protocols, defaults. You get the picture. There's more about individual and team-based psychological factors and influences that can determine whether you win or you lose. Whereas right now, it feels like the main community of Valorant in esports, analysts, casters, coaches, everyone focuses on the strategy. And I think we need to just give more attention and more focus to the bigger picture. We need to work smarter, not just harder. Instead of throwing your players into having 15-hour scrim days and just keep drilling the same things over and over again, we need to work smarter, not harder. What needs to change? Okay, right now, as you've already can probably tell, coaching has to change from being strategy focused. We need personnel, whether that is head coaches or assistant coaches, or performance psychologists coming in and educating head coaches and personnel on the bigger picture. Other micro variables such as leadership, developing our players, communication, motivation, culture, things that every team requires in order to win. In order to win a Champions, in order to win a Masters, in order to win an international or a regional matchup game, these factors have to be considered and not just focus on the strategy. Leadership is critical, okay? It influences almost every single factor, every single variable about a team's success or negative performance. Leadership, good leadership, can positively influence communication, motivation, cohesion, dynamics. Really important things that go into winning. Poor leadership, well, it influences burnout and conflict and just negative experiences within the team. I can probably count on two hands how many players have left or took a break from the Valorant esports scene due to burnout or the lack of fun being had within some of these teams. And fun is required to succeed within anything you do. You have to enjoy it. And it's no different with esports. If anything, within esports, it's emphasized. We're playing video games. So I genuinely, hand on heart, believe that some of these organizations need to change and adapt their recruitment process for certain coaches and personnel if they want the results to increase. Leadership affect everything. Environment, player behavior, performance, results. It all starts with leadership. With a poor leader, you're going to have a hard time. It's going to be like climbing up a mountain without any shoes on. But with a positive and an effective leader, well, you might as well just take the cable car to the top of the mountain because you'll have a much more enjoyable time going via that transport. So what makes an effective leader? This is the question I'm sure a lot of you are asking. Well, there's 4 main categories from cognitive, personality, motivation, and social. And here are some of the core attributes that go into an effective leader. But what I want to draw everyone's attention to is emotional intelligence. It's one of the biggest predictors of leadership success, and it's incredibly important within esports. We have young players that haven't gone through that much of their life already. So they're going to be a little bit confused about certain emotions, certain feelings, certain anxieties. So as a coach, you have to be emotionally intelligent. You have to be empathetic. You have to be self-regulated and controlling your emotions. You can't be a hothead. If you as a coach can't have one of these attributes, or you're not willing to develop this attribute throughout your time coaching, your players are going to have a horrible time. Your organization, your roster isn't going to have the success that you might have hoped for. And it all comes down to leadership again. Being a leader isn't easy. I have seen so many players across my time within this esport Valorant scene where a player one year is a controller or an initiator player, sometimes even a duelist, and they just decide on a whim to pick up the IGL role. It's not possible. It isn't feasible. Being a leader isn't easy. You have to direct so much more attention, so much energy, so much focus, so much more time into supporting your team and working on behalf of your team that I don't think a lot of individuals realize the responsibilities involved with leading a team. Possessing a leadership quality or a trait doesn't automatically make you a leader, though. Let's not get mixed up here. But it's a combination of those traits and the willingness to lead and the understanding of the bigger picture. So who is this mystery individual? Who is this perfect candidate that can lead my team? Well, it's nobody. But that's where a shared leadership framework is extremely important within esports, but also Valorant esports more specifically, because it diverts the attention and it diverts the responsibilities of just one individual being the sole leader for a team. And it's already reflected. We've got head coaches, we've got assistant coaches, we've got in-game leaders, we've got sometimes mid-rounders. That is a shared leadership structure. But it's the same issue again. It's all focused on tactical. We are disregarding the social and the developmental leadership within our teams. And let me make one thing clear, okay? I'm not saying all teams are doing this, but I think most are. And I think that this conversation needs to be had in order for the esports scene to grow, but also for the performance to increase and for the scene to be so much more healthier. Because with the roster changes that we're seeing, these are people's lives, okay? And I don't believe that it is solely down to the individual mechanics that are costing you that loss. I personally blame the coaching, but also the structure the organizations are allowing these teams to be built upon. Now, shared leadership, like I said, it's a great model because it allows for not only just a single leader to carry the burden, but for responsibilities to be spread across different individuals depending on their strengths and their weaknesses. Flow and creativity seem to flourish in a shared leadership environment. So if you want a more productive team, if you want creativity, if you want ideas to be flowing, then allow this shared leadership structure to be properly implemented. But that's one of the issues, is just by installing this shared leadership model, there are downsides. When you have multiple leaders, depending on the responsibilities and the hierarchy of the leadership, you can have conflicts and you can have decisions that you all can't just decide on. You have counter views. Therefore, it has to be clearly and effectively implemented, and the application has to be accurate. Otherwise, it's going to be a nightmare. What is the optimal leadership structure? Here, I've made a quick little rough diagram. But to me, the head coach has to have the most leadership qualities. That has to be the individual that possesses most attributes. And it's a trickling effect. Everything is connected. It all starts with the head coach. And the head coach can then direct the assistant coach and the IGL and then the players. And it goes through this hierarchy as shown here. But the assistant coach, that's where the tactical specialist should come in. As I said before, head coaches, in my opinion, have been focused way too much on the strategy. They need to be more aware of psychological factors, and especially psychology in high performance environments. Whether it's from sport or organizational psychology, it doesn't matter. You have to have a head coach that understands the factors that go into team building, team effectiveness, and team success. Now, that's a hard ask, because you can't essentially find a head coach that has a psychology degree, also knows the intricacies of Valorant and esports, and can coach. So what is a potential solution? Well, even hiring a sports psychologist that can educate and almost coach the head coach would be a much healthier solution. And I think that teams have often brought in sports psychologists to help the players. And I think that's great, but I also think they need to help the head coach, because nobody's perfect. We can all work on things. And I think that would be a great solution to fixing the overall health of the Valorant scene. Players, that's where accountability and culture, that is the things that they practice. That is the things that they should be leaders within, holding everyone responsible for the communication style and structure, to motivation, to discipline, to positivity and motivation. That is where the players should thrive. Without this role clarity, without this leadership clarity within these rosters, there's going to be an overlap. There's going to be contradicting opinions and conflicting behaviors. And that same again is only going to make things worse. Leadership, it affects everything. If you have a positive head coach that is a high quality leader, the in-game leader will perform better. The assistant coach will perform better, therefore making the players perform better. Leadership, the head coach can affect the team environment, player behavior, the performance, and the results. It is all connected. Nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. Ralph Waldo Emerson. It's extremely important for people to remember this quote, because I think it's important for everyone to take on into any aspect of their life. You have to have fun in what you're doing. And so many teams, to me, perform poorly because they focus too much on the strategy. They focus too much on the micro, the retakes, the protocols, the executes. The list doesn't end. You have to have fun. And as a leader, you can make sure that you're not just taking a walk down a dark tunnel. You understand where you're going. You understand the vision that these players and yourself are going towards. This shared goal of winning a champion, winning a Masters can be achieved. But as a head coach, you have to enjoy the work that you're doing. You have to be in this to improve players, not only within game, but out of game too. And we need to care more about those factors and variables. So what is my conclusion? Well, Like I said, I think organizations really need to divert their attention to the scouting process of head coaches, and organizations need to take more of a hands-on role at developing these coaches and developing leaders, because that is how the esports scene is supposed to grow. That is how the performance will increase over the next coming years of Valorant Esports. And something I want people to remember is strategy provides the tactical framework for success, but leadership creates the environment that allows individuals and teams to consistently execute that strategy under pressure. If you can have the best, most thought out, most well developed strat book out of every other team, but if you cannot perform on the big stage, it means nothing. And leadership, it makes everything easier. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry I've took up a lot of your time. It was only supposed to be a short presentation, but as you can tell, I'm extremely passionate about this topic, and I think it needs to be discussed a lot more in depth. So if you haven't already, head over to my Twitter, drop me a DM, follow. I'd love to have a conversation with some of you about your thoughts and feelings on this topic. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think that there's other things we need to consider? It's really important. Like I said, I am a free agent Valorant coach, so if you would like to talk further, then feel free to message me. I'm always open to networking. But thank you for listening. See you later.